But one thing I really want to pull out of there that I'm hearing as an overarching kind of theme is this strength through vulnerability.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I mean, that you were willing to take that step and be vulnerable, not just to other people, but to your story.
Mm-hmm.
It's not an easy place to be. And when you're just so mangled, and it is, you know, before the scar can really build up, vulnerability is painful. I mean, it's poking an open wound. So of course it's painful, but you did it anyway.
Yeah, it doesn't, again, may not make logical sense. I do remember hearing Brene Brown's, and thank you for mentioning her in that, but I do remember hearing Brene Brown's talk on vulnerability, like at least a decade ago, probably 12, 13 years ago. And the first time I heard it, I remember thinking, that's interesting. Like, that's interesting. That's vulnerability. Okay, well, see, really the number one need of humans is we want to build connection. That really is, like, we want to feel connected, like we belong, like we are part of something. And I won't do her quotes justice, but she always spoke in the sense that, you know, if we want to have courage first so that we can be vulnerable, and it doesn't work that way. Like, we want to have the results without actually being vulnerable. It doesn't work that way. You actually have to embrace vulnerability first, so that leads you to courage, that leads you to connection. So you don't have courage, you don't gain courage just because you want it. You actually have to do an action. Courage is a verb, and that's how I call it. It's a verb. And if you do something that makes you uncomfortable, all of a sudden you now build a little bit of courage that I can do that. And so what started to happen is that when I shared my story from the mom's point of view, I never really shared the details of my kids. I shared what it was like as a parent, because the other piece being that for some reason, moms feel like we sign this unwritten contract that every single thing that happens in our life is our responsibility to fix. I didn't sign it, but I thought that I did. And so then I take all of that on, right? That's my responsibility to fix this. That's a ridiculous amount of pressure to put on, because eventually, and I used to say this, like, our kids hit a point where they have their own brain. Like, I can't control it. I've tried. I can't do it. It's their brain. Yeah. And so it's like, wait a minute, like, I am actually taking 100% responsibility for something I can't even control, like that, like, logically breaking it down. So Brené's message on vulnerability, when I really started to see it differently, I was like, okay, so if I can start to share a little bit more of myself in my own way, would that help to build connection? And it didn't happen overnight. And I actually think that most people who have never practiced vulnerability, you will do it wrong in the beginning. And I don't want to say wrong or right, but you will share with the wrong people, is what I mean. You will share with the wrong people. And I remember in the beginning going like, okay, I reached out to some friends, my close friends, and I was sharing with them like what was happening. And when you're in this kind of story, I'm watching their reaction, their facial reactions, and I'm like, all right, this isn't normal. Like, I forget that I live it. That's not normal. But it didn't take long before, like, the next day or two, I'm hearing all the details that I've shared out there publicly for everyone. And I'm like, okay, now it's not safe to share, right? It's not safe. And so you're going to do it wrong until you start to understand, like, who do you want to connect with? Who do you want to add into your life? And slowly but surely, what happened was vulnerability did bring some of the best connections that I have. And so every time I get scared of sharing or being more of me, I literally stop, and I'm an evidence seeker. I look for evidence in my life. I don't always paint worst case scenario. Hear me kill it. I correct my language often. I look for the evidence of where have I done it in the past and what happened. And I can tell you now that everyone who is in my life, literally everyone, almost every single one of them, they weren't here a decade ago. They weren't even in my life then. The people who were in my life then, they're gone, and they're gone. And I mean, completely burned down, gone. And so it's a reminder that you're going to go through these changes and growths, but vulnerability will allow you to connect with the people that you're meant to connect with, and allowing yourself to be seen. And that can just be, it doesn't mean you have to open up your entire life to the world, but can you find a way to just stretch vulnerability a little bit, because if I can also share one quick thing from an NLP perspective,
Yeah.
our subconscious mind, its number one's job is to keep us safe. It's its number one job above everything else is to keep us safe. And that our subconscious mind runs 95% of our programming. It's our hard drive of our body. It runs everything. Thoughts, beliefs, decisions, choices, everything. So if you're like, okay, well, Marsha said to practice vulnerability, I'm going to go online. I'm going to share everything about my story. Your subconscious mind will freak out because it's like, that's not safe. We can't do that. So you don't have to tackle it all at once. It's taken a long time to get to here. But what is like one thing you can do a little bit more? What's one thing you can stretch yourself in doing? So that's how I decided. I mean, I, by mistake or not mistake, coincidence, whatever you want to call it, I really wanted to start to share in the online space, but everything was very curated at that time. And I thought, I can't like just come up and be all perfectly done to do a Facebook Live when my life is a gong show. Like that doesn't even make sense. So I didn't have a strategy behind it, but I decided to start doing lives after hot yoga when I was physically a mess. And because that felt safe for me to show up that way. I would love to say I had logically and strategically figured that out. I had not, but it just felt safe. And this was real and this was me. And at that time, everything in the world was very perfectly curated. And here I am saying, yeah, life isn't easy, but I'm doing this for me today. I'm trying to lead myself this way. And I made it about that. So it's finding your way for vulnerability. Sorry, that was a long answer, but finding your way to work through vulnerability.